Yes. So here night falls, and I am leaving the school. I don't live at the school anymore. I'm a visitor and a guest. And because I never want to make John anxious. And if you watched last night's The Paranormal Elvis, you get a good glimpse of that. And it's not for us to judge. It's for us to be empathetic and to help. And not to be the hero, but to be the friend. And to assist where we can, do the most good. You know what, Hippocrates, he said, do no harm. Whatever you do, a lot of people do, I'm going to take you, I'm the hero, I'm going to fix this, No, if you cannot do good, don't do anything. Do no harm. And what people have very little realization of is the unexpected consequence. And that's what happened when our will was sparked by the snakes. I have a YouTube towards the beginning of my thing of Eve as mayor, Adam as moron, God as the uninterested parent, and the snake as the kind of snake oil salesman. Anyway, so I went to the movies today, and the two movies I saw when me and Tom Tom, who I go to the movies with and have lunch with, it's like two old guys, we're like a cartoon cutout. We were talking about the movies we were going to go see, and we were looking at them on the newspaper and online, and he wanted to go see Alpha. So I said, fine, no problem. I always acquiesce because Tom's always got a good taste in a movie, and 99.8% of the time, it's like, actually, all the time I go see the movie, it's not a problem. But the other side of the coin, there is no other side of the coin. But I hate going to movies and getting there before the movie, And they got these stadium lights on that I got these little blue eyes that really are sensitive to light. So I usually, when we go and get our tickets, I usually peel off and go to whatever, of the 18 zillion cinemas there are in the movie hall that's playing, and I watch 15, 20 minutes of that and then walk into the movie that we're going to watch. And he sat there through the blinding stadium lights and then through the annoying commercials and then through the even worse annoying subliminal pretend that these aren't commercials but they really are. And I usually walk in just as the previews start. But the movie I went to see was White Boy, whatever his name is. And when I saw that in the paper, I said, well, we were talking about neighborhoods and violence and this and that because there were these kids from Tech who, sliced up some little girl and they just, were sent off to jail. This kind of happened last year. But anyway, and these kids came from good families, were at a really prestigious school, were totally, the epitome of folks who think they're entitled to do whatever they want to do. Anyway, so we were talking, how could anyone do that? And I said, I've lived in neighborhoods that, if the folks didn't know you, they basically kill you. And, I lived in Brownsboro, Red Hook, Bay Ridge, South Bronx, Southie and Boston, Baltimore, some really bad neighborhoods in D.C., Maryland. Anyway, so I walked into this white boy. Anyway, it's about Detroit, in 1986. And I was living in a neighborhood just like that, and everything about that movie was exactly, I mean, exactly what I was experiencing. And it was, I don't know if you've ever gone to a movie and they do it in the city that you either grew up or you live in, and you see, oh, look, that's where I go get donuts. Oh, you know. But man, to watch this, the movie was about my neighborhood and the people I knew exactly. I mean, they were architects Soho in New York when it was factories because I worked for an electrician and I spent a lot of time fixing fax, factory machines. And the guy who was the super of about 10 buildings one day said, you know, Al, I want to show you something. He took me up to the top of one of the buildings on Worcester Street in Soho. It was 7,000 square foot long, and it had like 20 gigantic skylights, and the whole back wall was glass and had amazing light. And this building was built before electricity, So, of course, they had gas lights and had as much sunlight as they could get in there for their manufacturing. Anyway, so and then they had DC and Edison's little light bulbs before they had AC. So he goes, listen, if you just sweep out do my job as super, fix things, change the light bulbs, sweep the hallways, you can have this loft free. I said, wow, that's great, sure. So I did. I fixed it. I was one of the first people who lived in Soho. This is 1960 blah 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 blah. 67? Yeah, I think so. And I had my apartment over on the Lower East Side on Avenue B, and Allen Ginsberg was but he had basically taken that whole thing over. I mean, I was still, had my downstairs little bedroom and my little office library upstairs next to the kitchen, but he was running his everything out of that place, which was cool. That was part of my cultural everything. But this loft was so amazing, and I was starting to do paintings because I had just gone to Juilliard to study. I had been a scenic lighting designer. I had worked for Lester Polikoff, who was like, the guy. He worked. He was Joe Melziner's best boy, and Joe Melziner invented modern lighting design. He invented the Fresnel, Malico, and the follow spot. Anyway, the super trooper. Anyway, so I was really involved. I worked for Herbert Berghoff and Uta Hagen. I was part of the Living Theater. Um, so, I was part of this whole avant-garde scene and the art scene. And I was building OK Harris on West Broadway, and other galleries were moving from 57th Street down into Soho, and it was becoming the realization of what Soho was. And artists were living in lofts, and the city was giving people a hard time because, oh, you're not a factory. That's why Andy Warhol called his loft the factory, and he got a commercial license, so no one gave him a hard time. Andy was a smart guy. Anyway, so and I, all of these people need an electrician. Need somebody to fix things for them. That was it. So there I had this great loft, and it was on Worcester Street, and I was there about a year, and I'm still going to school. I'm still like going to prep school, So, and I went to the Winchington School for Boys in Winchington, Mass, and it had 160 students in the whole school, and it was the richest. I went to school with Eddie Merrill, Ricky Lynch, Joe Kennedy, who's a congressman now, was my roommate. You name the corporate person, they went to that school, and they were all screw ups. And I got thrown out of Canterbury. I was at a seminary to be a priest, the rocket scientist for the Pope, and I rebelled. So I ended up at Winchington. And the headmaster and a few other teachers gave me a hard, you think you're so cool, you went to Canterbury, blah, 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 blah. Well, we're going to screw you, we're going to tighten the bolts and then make it, and I was like, yeah, well, whatever, I had psycho priests trying to kill me, so you guys are nothing. And the bottom line of Winchington School was that
the students were so rich that they didn't care about that school, and their parents were on the board of that school. Their parents got together, bought a country club in Winchington, Massachusetts, and turned it into a prep school so they could dump their kids there. And we went to school at the end of September to the end of April because we didn't leave. We only left for Christmas. We had 2 weeks off for Christmas, and we went to school 7 days a week. We went to school on Saturday and Sunday. So they squeezed, whatever the state said, how many days and weeks and hours you had to have in class. They squeezed it into. So, meaning when I, left, I went off to be the electrician that I was. I went to work for, Herbert. Da 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 da. So the I had this loft, and I was about 17, and I was the head electrician at the Fillmore East. I worked for Bob Goddard. I kind of rewired that whole place. That place was like wired in the 20s, and I put real electric service in. I put sub panels on the stage, so the bands could roll in and just plug straight in and not have to go through the Frankenstein system of that place. Anyway, and I totally grounded out uh, the sub panel for what the sound system, so there was no buzz whatsoever, and nobody got electrocuted when they, grabbed a microphone, which was the case of most old rock and roll houses. And so I had through Carnegie Mellon and Carnegie Hall. I was their master electrician, um, but at Juilliard. So I was, so I already knew how to be a lighting designer. I wanted to learn set painting. I wanted to learn trompe-l'oeil. I wanted to learn that whole motif. And so I, went there, and my good friend Marion Tulin, who was on the board and ran Hofstra's art and theater department, which I was there for about a semester and a half, and then I got a gig with Lester, and all my teachers used to give me a hard time. Why are you here at this school? If we had the job you had, we wouldn't be. We're only teaching because we can't get employed. You got the dream. You got like 6 dream jobs. Give us one. So so I was the dude. So I wanted to paint. I was wiring these art galleries and these fancy restaurants, and I wanted to paint. And so I wanted to do murals. So so I wanted to learn trompe-l'oeil, and I wanted to learn how to do, set painting, and then I went into murals. And so anyway, so I had this big loft, and I was, first painting all the walls. I was painting everything, and so one day I was, building a kitchen and a bathroom, and then all of a sudden I heard it sounded like an earthquake, and someone was breaking through the brick wall, and there was a fire door there, right? But that had been bricked over, and all the bricks exploded out, and there was a guy in a cat, this little bulldozer with tires and a jackhammer on the end of it, and that was Eddie Green. And Eddie Green had he and his family controlled most of the drugs up in the South Bronx, and he was, broadening out, and he wanted to make his own nightclub. So he knew um, Benny, the guy who was a super, because Benny had his own underground. I mean, these 10 buildings that Benny was in charge of were all connected underground. And underground, he had prostitutions, drugs, gambling, and every other kind of, distraction. And that's why I was doing Benny's job. And so Benny, hooked up with, I think he was uncle to my friend, Mr. Green, and he and his brother. And so anyway, um, they say, "Oh yeah, Benny told us about you. Yeah, you build nightclubs, so we want to build a nightclub here." And I said, "Okay, sounds like," yeah. And they had some serious money and a lot of drugs. So, and this was, before Studio 54, and this was going to be an after-hours club. So the rich people would come in their limos and come up the elevator, and have a groovy place. So I did the place soup to nuts, and I still, we had this like little apartment in the back, you know, that was like, the VIP lounge. But behind that was Eddie's and mine and Stevie's and the family's kind of. She had a nice little apartment back there. We had a nice little kitchen and nice bathroom, shower, jacuzzi, blah blah blah. We would try to make it like Hugh Hefner's grotto. And so, what was really great about the Green family was that this is when the South Bronx and everything was kind of falling apart. What Harlem had been, what the black community had been, was like just falling apart because drugs were coming in via the Vietnam War, via the Golden Triangle. Go watch the movie The French Connection. And there's another movie where Sean Penn plays a Jewish mobster just after World War II, and he's Italian too. And this is where the mob got involved with, the CIA, but, when it was the OSS. And basically, what happened was, if you ever saw the movie Ignoble Bastards, where the guys were, basically behind the German lines, just whacking Germans left and right. And they were doing like a parallel history of what happened to World War II. And what was interesting was, because it was parallel, but it was still what happened. And I think that was a Quentin Tarantino film. Anyway, so the mob was very involved with, and so that's what they kind of, before we landed on Omaha Beach, we had all these really crazy mothers going all over the Nazi thing, screwing with them, killing people and then running away. And they weren't the French resist, they were just, so that if the Nazis killed the whole French town, these guys didn't care. They just kept killing Nazis and freaking Nazis out. I mean, like I said, go watch that movie. It really captures what these clowns did. And it's not really in the history. If you dig it up, you can see that. And one of the people who were the crazy mothers who did this was Spiro T. Agnew. And Spiro T. Agnew tried to diss the anti-war movement because every one of us who were in the anti-war movement, we weren't hippies. We were flower children. We were about love. We were putting flowers in the barrels of the National Guard. And so Spiro, he was the guy who was pretty good with linguistics. And so he basically started calling all the flower children hippies, because what hippies were people who were motorcycle gang guys who murdered people for money and shot heroin and meth in their hip. That's why they're called hippies, right? And they'd be shooting 8 balls. So this was going on all around me through Eddie and Benny. It was like so bizarre. And on the other side were all of these super rich people like Henry Kissinger and the Rockefellers who were coming. And this was the precursor. There was a club I helped build called the Hellfire Club, which was a takeoff of what Ben Franklin did in Paris in the 1770s. Jefferson went to France to be our first ambassador, and the French thought he was so friggin' boring. But when Franklin showed up, I mean, he was like the Albert Einstein. Franklin was just next. There was the kite and the key, and the next step was building anti-gravity. This guy he knew, the secrets of physics, and he was a party animal. So he started a nightclub in Paris called the Hellfire Club, where the rich people, the nobles, would come in, and they'd have a door for women and a door for guys, and they had a dressing room where everyone took their clothes off and would wear these super fancy masks and being totally naked. and go into total debauchery, doing drugs and alcohol, and having a really grand old time. And the French aristocrats said, "Boy, this Franklin guy, he is a bomb. We love this guy. We hate the English. They're our like stuffy cousins. So yeah, we'll back these guys." So anyway, I helped build a nightclub in New York City called the Hellfire Club. But that was years, after Eddie Green's and Stevie Green's and Mama Green's nightclub in Soho, and and that was quite the thing. And so there I was, 17, you know, and all my intelligentsia avant-garde friends loved coming to this place too, which again built my street cred for building nightclubs. And but the amazing thing about the Greens was they took half the money they made on this thing and brought it up to the South Bronx, and they were funding Malcolm X's heritage, meaning his temple. Man, you went in that place; it didn't look like a mosque. He called it a temple, and you walked in there. If you needed a meal, there was a dining room. If you needed medical help, there was a clinic. If you needed clothes, there was a place. You had to pay for anything. They were there to serve. They would help you get any kind of service. They were better. They were better social activists and social servants than the city. Anyway, so the Greens were funding that after X got whacked, and there were a lot of abandoned buildings, and we were taking them over and fixing them up and putting homeless and families. We were focusing on families, and we had daycare, and they funded it all with their revenues from this nightclub and from their sale of illicit substances to the rich. And it was really amazing, and it was great, and I felt it was like, this is what social services should be, right? And meaning I saw X do that. I saw the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers were never violent. They didn't have guns until the cops started killing them. Just like that movement in Philly called Move. And what did they didn't break any laws, so the cops couldn't do anything. So one day the cops decided to bomb this movement, and they bombed the building, which caught fire and killed like 60 people inside that building. But it went and burnt down 6 blocks, 90 buildings, put 500 families on the street. And the cops blamed Move for that. There were 9 people who were charged with the 10 or so deaths of the people who died in the fires that the police started by dropping a bomb from a helicopter, and they charged these people. And the same thing with the Panthers and with the X's movement, and the same thing happened to Green's movement. And the thing that has always saved me, because I have that, I'm like Forrest Gump. I have this tendency to be right in the middle of things, just as they're getting started and then they're most grooviest. And for, about 5 years, I would get involved in this stuff. And then I'd have to go to school. And that's when the shit would hit the fan with these folks. Meaning when I came back from my junior year in prep school, the Greens were dead. And so this movie I watched, White Boy, whatever the kid's name is, and it takes place in Detroit, was exactly what I was experiencing in New York. And I was like the guy who was, in it but not in it. I wasn't dealing drugs. I was like being the electrician. And Mrs. Green, I was up in the South Bronx with her, taking over abandoned buildings and putting homeless families, into these things, and then starting schools to get the kids educated. And that's where I first learned how to. I met Ralph Nader, and I joined NYPIRG, and they had I
initially worked in their water scene for, you know, where all the poor people lived. I mean, that thing that happened in Michigan with the drinking water, well, that's been going on for years. All the poor people have the worst. And right now, in America, everybody is having that because we have ignored our infrastructure so much. It's like unbelievable. And you know what's happened in North Carolina? A few years ago, there was a a TV show about what was the big hurricane that wiped out South Florida and the air base there. I mean, it was just right. Anyway, and so in this TV show, what happens is that these alien species that are like seeds get sucked out of space by this hurricane and get thrown into the petri dish of southern Florida, of the Keys, and they are like it's like the TV show is like the body snatchers, right? And what's interesting is that the creature that comes out looks just like, you know, your mom or your brother, and it's not like, oh, but Bob isn't being the same guy I knew. No, because the personality, it's like the body is shared by both these entities. So there's the space seed that comes in that's kind of alien, and the personality of the body that has been taken. Anyway, that's what's going to happen in North Carolina. Man, that is such a petri dish right now. All of those pig farms, those chicken farms, all of the farming has like so been taken away by the flooding into every water table. Man, the shit that's going to come out of this in North Carolina. There's going to be new species coming out of it, new humans, you know, and the powers that be, the guys, you know, Mr. Microsoft, you know, Bill Boy, Bill Gates, he's putting all his money into um, transhumanism, and he's got a facility down near Port St. Lucie, near that nuclear power plant, the Turkey Point. And all of this, these are like all little dots. It's like when you go look at 9/11, it's like dots, every crumbs everywhere. Everything's connected, you know. It's just amazing how no one, I mean, it's right in front of everyone's face. Meaning, when I wasn't there, I was in Roanoke and I was in my favorite coffee shop downtown. And again, this was another one of these moments where the universe kind of went sideways. You know, no longer, here's what it used to be, now this is what it is. And I was given a front door seat. I was watching the TV when the airplanes hit it, and I was playing Go with a friend of mine who was a doctor at the hospital there, and he was Iranian. And this guy was the most cultured guy in Roanoke. And, you know, he liked me because I was well read and we could talk about everything and I wasn't prejudiced about anything. And I didn't believe in anything. So I wasn't like a holy roller Christian or a holy roller anything, you know. And he looks at me and he goes, "This will change everything. You will never see me again after today." And I didn't. I don't know where he went, you know, but he, you know. So, the bottom line is we're at another one of those turning points. And last night's little, you know, poltergeist Elvis was, you know, my little, I'm always the bard of metaphor. Everything I say and do is a vehicle to enlighten you. Now, Johnny gets upset over everything that's said and done. And, oh, you have to take that down. I said, no, I don't. You know, but you know the interesting thing about Johnny, he will steal anything. I mean, well, I'm going to just take that and re-edit it. I said, well, can you do that? Oh, sure. I'm going to spend $1,000 and buy the software that'll let me do that. You know, it's like, really? So you know, my basic thing about my YouTube here is trying to wake you up, right? And I'm not, you know, married to being famous. You know, I've been infamous my whole friggin' life. You know, so I really don't it would be nice to get a job. Guys there who you guys who are listening, the powers that be, hey, I'm ready to work for you because I know, I am a student of history and alchemy, and you know, I'm a psychosocial cultural forensic anthropologic shamanic alchemist. And what I want to do is not stop, you know, what you guys are doing. I just want to give you a little nudge in a positive direction because I know it's just like the scene out of The Matrix where the architect and the oracle are sitting on the park bench, good and evil there. And they realize, they know that neither of them are good or evil. They are part of the whole. And I know I am part of the collective. And I know I can do you guys so much good, give you, because man, you are painting yourself into a corner. You do it all the time. I mean, every 1600 years or so, you morons paint yourself into a corner. And I know most of you because I went to high school with you. You know, I know Austin Hurst. I know what a, oh baby, there are some, and there are morons of you, and that's like everybody else. And the smart ones of you have always been my friends, have always given me, a little help. Well, it's time that Al needs a little help. I need a chorus, I need a cadre. I want to take the show on the road. I have no money. Now I'm enjoying living in the forest. I'm, because I'm going back, you know, and when they used to call Jesus a Nazarene, it wasn't a neighborhood. It wasn't like you came from Red Oak. It's a type of viewpoint, you know. So anyway, and you used. I mean, look what you did with Jesus. You turned him into you know, a trademark like Kleenex or KFC. So you paint yourself in the corner. You need a hand, and I'm ready to give you a hand because I want to save humanity. I want to bring forth the realization of love's co-creation. It's always here. It's always, it's helping you guys too. Why do you think you exist? You know? So I'm not here to, I'm not like any of those, I care about every movement. And I want to give them a little nudge towards love's co-creation. And you guys know me. You've seen me do it time after time after time. I don't want to be famous. I don't want to be, meaning I will get up and give the speech if I have to. I've done it before, like I did at the UN, you know. But that's not my job. My job is to assist. I'm like a, oh, you got the midwife and you got the doula. I'm the doula of love's co-creation. I'm here to be of assistance. But I need a job. I need a nice salary. I need to be safe. Because I'm loving where I'm living. But when the winter comes, I don't want to be found next spring being eaten by squirrels. My ascension, not my evolution. So, I'm here to help, So, anyway, kids, well, I haven't seen any. Oh, there's a few. I'm listening. Hello. Okay, I'm glad you're listening. Um, you get a hold of me at the dudeawake42 at Gmail. Go read my writings at xratted.blogspot.com. You know, go, you're watching me here on Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. So, I'm loving it. I come and visit Johnny Boy because of the really great, Wi-Fi here, so I can just lay tracks down. And John's my friend. I mean, there's nobody keeping him company, you know. And he needs, I don't know, I've tried. It's been very good for me in that it's it's sharpened my quill, um, because I was, working for you guys and being the demographer and the scholar and the negotiator for desperate lawyers. But that was a very it's just me and the dogs, me and Bella and Homie, which was great. But I spent 10 years being a hedonist, gaining 220 pounds that nearly freaking killed me, and I am now, you know, dancing with all of diabetes, neuropathy, Charcot leg, and everything else. And as my doctor says, boy, you are the healthiest dead guy I know. So these are all meaning I have to meditate every morning, which is good, meaning because I stopped meditating for 10 years. So, you know, pain is our friend, as long as it doesn't kill us or so distract us. What pain did for me was made me get back into my, you know, meditative ways. So here it is. How many minutes? 36:48. So at 37, I will stop at 37:37. I just wanted to give you a perspective of what's going on and love your dog as yourself and always be your better self before you become a gangster. Don't let rage and anger take you over. There's no sense. There's no upside to it. When I was 6, I realized there was no upside to lying, cheating, and stealing. And that it's always better to be your better angel than your little devil. My grandma used to call me Wiziao, little devil. So as long as it's said in affection. Okay, guys, I love you all. Stay well, be good. And before I leave, maybe I'll throw down another one later tonight or tomorrow morning or sometime soon. Or, when I get back to the woods, the only place I can really lay this down is at my library. And that's, I have to drive 40 miles to do that. I probably won't be back here for a few weeks. I don't have any really scheduled medical things. So, and it's going to be beautiful in the woods. The best time is the end of September, October, November. After Thanksgiving, the woods starts to get a little iffy. So, any of you rich women down there in South Florida who wants a good pool boy, Mr. Fix-It, a massage therapist that will cool your toes, a chef, and a dancing partner. I'm your boy. I really am. And one thing that people always say, Al, you're an acquired taste. But once you get acquired, I really want to taste you all the time, right? So there's that. The other side of the coin, I am not a moron guy. I never could understand guys who have women in their life and who treat women poorly. First, you have to realize women are superior to men. Secondly, all humans start out as women, and then when the losers, come out of the sieve, they're guys. So, guys are basically, cannon fodder. So, again, I need a warm place to stay when it gets cold. So, and I need a job that pays me pretty good because I got, I'm living on $500 a month, which I'm doing pretty good, pretty creatively. I'm always glad to give you guys a good story. It's like a bedtime story, right? Okay. So sweet dreams. I'll speak to you soon. I love you guys. I love you all.